Hi there. The lecture that you are going to watch on rhetoric is one that I recorded last semester, but I have edited a little bit because I have made some references to a book that we are not using in this course. So any mention that I have of chapters, you can just disregard because we're not using a book. However, the information that's contained in the lecture is still relevant. And it's information that you need to know in order to proceed with the rhetorical analysis assignment. So with no further ado, here you go.
So I have the definition up here of rhetorical, because when I say rhetoric and I'm talking about it in classes, students usually think about rhetorical, especially as it relates to rhetorical questions. So we know that a rhetorical question is one that's asked in order to produce some kind of an effect or to make some kind of a statement, rather than actually gaining information or getting some kind of an answer. But when we use the term rhetorical, it's actually, we are thinking more, something, of course, concerned with the art of rhetoric, as it says here in this definition, but also something that's expressed in terms intended to persuade or to impress. So rhetoric is just, well, what is it? It is the art of speaking or writing effectively. So in this class, we are learning the art of writing effectively. If you go on and you take some kind of public speaking class, you're going to learn the art of speaking effectively. And maybe some of you were in debate club in your high schools, so you may be familiar with this whole idea of rhetoric. It's the way that we use words in order to be effective, but also the way that we can persuade or impress our audience. So we're going to repeat over and over again these ideas relating to rhetoric and the rhetorical situation. You'll probably get tired of it, but you'll see in your book that there are 5 key components of rhetoric, and I believe this is in chapter 2. So here we have context, purpose, audience, tone, and genre. I'm not going to go through the explanations because I think the text actually does a fantastic job of explaining the variety of things that come together to form the rhetorical situation. But I do love graphics, so I put that graphic up there. That's kind of a variation of the graphic that's used in the textbook. Here is another one, and this is from a handout called the rhetorical situation. And this is a little bit of a Venn diagram. I'm kind of nerdy that way. I like Venn diagrams. I think they're kind of cool. So here we have 3 things that come together, right? We have circles of writer and subject and audience. Those are the 3 things that are interacting, right? When you are writing something, you are the writer. You are writing the subject, the thing, right? And of course, you're putting it out there. You're putting it on paper. It's not staying in your head. So there is some kind of an audience. It may be a true audience, an actual physical being, like you write your papers and I'm reading them, or your classmates are reading them, but you could also have what's considered an imagined audience. When we write down to a writing task, or we're given a certain rhetorical situation, there are so many things that are coming together and so many things that we are thinking about that, it's more subconscious. We aren't sitting out and saying, well, who's my audience and what am I going to write and all that thing, right? So there are all these multiple things that kind of come together. We have the writer and the speaker, right? We have the audience, whether real or imagined. And of course, we have the purpose. What is the reason for writing, right? There is this purpose. What are you seeking from the audience? You have some reason behind wanting to write. We have exigence, which is kind of a fancy word for your motivation. It's similar to purpose, but not exactly the same. We have, of course, the subject. And that's related to context. Context, who's discussing this? Where and when is this an issue? So kind of the all the various things that are going on underneath is that context. And then of course we have genre, how the subject, how the topic that you are writing about, how it's presented to the audience. So in this class, we are primarily focusing on academic writing as our genre. So yeah, genre is the thing. And of course you see right here in the middle is the text, that which has been written. So that's another graphic for you to absorb. It's similar to some others, and yet another graphic. So here is something that we call the rhetorical triangle, and you may have seen this or heard about it before. And this is something, this graphic is kind of related to the rhetorical appeals that you read about in chapter 5. So writers and speakers persuade in 3 main ways. They use ethos, logos, and pathos, right? So ethos is the appeal to credibility, logos is the appeal to logic, and pathos is the appeal to emotion. So this triangle just kind of shows you how those 3 appeals are related to those 3 main things that we saw in the previous slide: the writer, the subject, the audience. Here they use context instead of subject, but you see that writer and ethos are related. And there are some questions here. Who are you? As a writer, you're building trust and you are establishing authority or establishing credibility. So ethos is a very important thing for you as a writer. Why are you confident to speak about the issue? Logos is related to context or the subject, that is the words that you're using, the support, the evidence that you have, any counter arguments, and any arguments that you use in your writing. And then lastly, audience and pathos are connected here because you are trying to provoke your audience with some kind of reaction. You want them to have some kind of an emotional awakening. Yeah, so you use that appeal to emotion to get your audience to embrace your message. And you'll see this a lot in advertising. So that's the rhetorical triangle. Next, we have the rhetorical appeals. As I said, logos, ethos, and pathos. Logos is the appeal to logic. You've got to convince your audience that the information you're presenting is well researched and also worthy of their time. So you'll use facts and figures, statistics, etc. Big time evidence, right? And we use that a lot in our research papers. Ethos, the appeal to ethics or the appeal to credibility. So here you're convincing the audience that you're credible as a speaker or as a writer and that your information is also credible. So you're going to be professional, you're going to use professional tone, have an awareness, use notable sources, experts in their field or celebrity status, that kind of thing. And then pathos is that appeal to emotions. So you want to convince your audience by making them feel something. It could be anger, it could be pity, compassion. Humor is a big one, as you'll see. I have a video that you'll be watching. Joy is another, frustration, so on and so forth.